I would like to welcome our third panel, Representative Duncan and Ranking Member Pallone from the Committee on Energy and Commerce to the witness table. Representative Duncan, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And let me just take a point of personal privilege. This will probably be my last time to present before the Rules Committee. And I want to thank you for the work you all do, because I know there are a lot of late nights. I know all the important legislation that comes to the House floor under a rule that y'all work so diligently on. For 14 years, I've seen the work that this committee has done, and it's certainly appreciated. I've enjoyed presenting. I've enjoyed the sparring and the camaraderie. Ranking Member Pallone and I have sat at this table numerous times together, and anyway, I appreciate it. And so the bill before you today, having gone through regular order, is H.R. 7673, the Liberty and Laundry Act, which will prohibit the Secretary of Energy from setting energy efficiency standards for clothes washers that are not technologically feasible and economically justified, likely to result in additional net cost to consumers, or not likely to result in significant conservation of energy. Now, this administration has consistently wanted to tell Americans how to cook their food, what appliances they were going to use to do that, how to wash dishes, how to heat and cool their homes, how to wash and dry their clothes, what kind of car they want to use with this attempt to electrify our nation. And they've taken the consumer choice out of the equation. And they've taken market forces out of the equation by pushing mandates forward that fit some sort of reality of what Americans should use. The bill is demanding common sense and regulation by the DOE in order to protect American consumers and keep appliances like clothes washers affordable and effective. We ought to be here to protect the consumer's pocketbook as much as anything. They should be affordable and effective. Through hearings and markups, the Energy and Commerce Committee has become clear that Congress must act to prevent the Biden administration from banning natural gas appliances and eliminating product features that the American people rely on and use. Through sue and settle agreements with environmental groups, the DOE has aggressive plans to regulate the sale of more than 60 categories of appliances and equipment. The DOE may ban or restrict access to thousands of household products that Americans can purchase today to heat our homes, prepare our meals, wash our clothes, wash our dishes, etc. We need to fix the broken process. In March of this year, the DOE issued a direct final rule for clothes washers efficiency standards, which must be complied with by 2028. These new standards will increase the already high cost of clothes washers. According to DOE's own analysis, the proposed rule could save as little as $9 for certain models over the average lifetime of the appliance, which is estimated to be 13.4 years. That came straight from DOE, not from me. DOE has failed to demonstrate the need for these new regulations, and it has failed to show that they are cost-effective and technologically feasible. H.R. 7673 will clarify DOE's authorities and protect clothes washers from over-regulation. Congress must act to stop the Biden administration and DOE from waging a war on our home appliances. We've been in this committee and we've talked about this over and over again. With the cost of everything increasing as a result of runaway inflation caused by the Biden administration's reckless spending policies, the last thing the DOE should be doing is making home appliances that Americans rely on every day more expensive. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join me in supporting this legislation. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me share Mr. Duncan's, what he said about all of you and how hard you work and how you're here oftentimes very late at night. I'm certainly not jealous in any way of all the work you do, and I actually do enjoy coming before the committee and with you as well. I was going to say, I know a lot of people want to get to the White House for the party, so I should be brief. Although I'm not really that concerned whether I go, so if you want to stay here all night, we can. But I did want to say that I remember one time when I came on the gas stoves, and Mr. Massey, who's not here, asked me if I had spent the weekend checking out appliance stores and gas stoves because he said that he had. And I said, no, I hadn't. And I didn't do it this weekend as well, so I want to tell you that. But I know that we've dealt with this quite a bit. And, in the context of refrigerators, a lot of different appliances. And I think the argument really is the same. This one is the Liberty and Laundry Act. But frankly, I believe very strongly that rather than save money, as you're suggesting, Mr. Duncan, that this legislation will actually cost consumers more money. And the reason I say that is because the Department of Energy, when they do these energy efficiency standards for washing machines as well as everything else, has to ensure that the energy conservation standards are economically justifiable, technologically feasible, and result in significant energy savings. And they have determined that, in fact, there is significant energy savings. In fact, they say the standards are expected to save Americans more than $18 billion on utility bills over 30 years, as well as things like reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 14 million metric tons and reduced water use for some models. I know that the argument that's often used on the Republican side is that, well, maybe the costs are going to go up a little the next few years, but the reality is you got to look at this long term. You can't look at it and say, okay, the washing machines are going to cost, $5 more next year. You have to look at it over the life of the washing machine, which is what the DOE uses and what we should use, in my opinion, in determining whether or not you're going to save money on energy bills. You do save money on energy bills as well as, protect the environment by having less fossil fuels in the atmosphere and also conserve water. And I think that, that's important. All these different aspects have to be looked at. Also, what I would point out is that the bills that they're seeking to repeal, if you will, or the standards that they're seeking to stop in this legislation are the result of a consensus agreement that involved industry, efficiency advocates, and consumer groups. So all these groups got together and said that on a consensus basis that this is the best way to go, looking at all these things, including saving money. So, this is a very popular thing. I think it would be really terrible if we simply say to the Department of Energy, well, in the future, you're not going to look at these standards, you're not going to look at energy efficiency, you're not going to look at what saves money, you're just not going to do anything. And I think that is essentially what's going to happen with this legislation, is that the whole concept, which has been around for a long time, of periodically looking and working with the industry to try to come up with ways of having more efficient appliances, which people want, that save money in the long term and also are better in terms of reducing greenhouse emissions in the atmosphere. All that's going to go out the window, and I think it's a shame. It's just not a good thing. So I would urge my colleagues not to support this legislation. Again, we've seen this so many times. It's not going to become law. None of these bills are going to become law in this Congress. And so I think we're just wasting time. But again, I know you don't agree with me, but that's my opinion on it. And with that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member. And I just want to say, Mr. Duncan, we will miss you, and we appreciate that you're here. And to both of you, I really appreciate the fact that you both said you enjoy your visits to Rules Committee, so thank you for that. Right now, I have no questions, so I'll call on Ranking Member McGill.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank you both for being here. I'm not going to have any questions because my wife's in town, and if I don't meet her, then she'll be my former wife. But I do want to say, because I was here late, I do want to express my condolences to Dr. Burgess. I heard the sad news, and my prayers are with him, and I know Mr. Massey suffered a loss as well, and he's in my thoughts and prayers. And oftentimes we get wrapped up in all these political debates here, but we're all human here, and we all experiences ups and downs in our lives, and sometimes tragedies. So I do want the record to reflect that they're both in my thoughts and prayers, and with that, I yield back.
Madam Chair, I'd like to include my entire statement into the record. I just summarized, if I could.
All right, certainly, without objection, so thank you. I would call on Mr. Norman. No questions, Mr. Magoo. How about if I just take volunteers? Mr. Roy? No? And would anyone like to ask questions? With that, you guys had it really easy. I hope you enjoyed your last visit, Mr.
And I will say,
Duncan.
some of the sparring I was talking about was with the gentleman from Colorado.
And
He
you
had a
enjoyed
got
it.
me moment one time, and it was fun, but I've enjoyed it, so God bless you.
Thank
Yeah.
you very, very much, and with that, you are excused. Is there anyone else seeking to testify on HR 7673, S 4199, or HR 5009? Without objection, this closes the hearing portion of our meeting. The chair will be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Madam Chair, I move the committee grant H.R. 7673, the Liberty and Laundry Act, a closed rule. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit. The rule further provides for consideration of S. 4199, the Judicial Understaffing Delays Getting Emergency Solved Act of 2024 under a closed rule. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Judiciary or their respective designees. The rule provides 1 motion to commit. The rule provides for further the rule further provides for consideration of Senate Amendment to H.R. 5009, the Service Member Quality of Life Improvement and National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. The rule makes in order a motion offered by the Chair of the Committee on Armed Services or his designee that the House concur in the Senate amendment with an amendment consistent of the text of the Rules Committee Print 118-52. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the motion. The rule provides for the Senate amendment, and the motion shall be considered as read. The rule provides 1 hour of debate on the motion, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Armed Services or their respective designees. Finally, the rule provides that the chair of the Committee on Armed Services may insert in the congressional record not later than December 10th, 2024, such material as he may deem explanatory of the Senate amendment and motion filed in Section 3. That's about as fast as I can do it, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very much. That shows real talent. And you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion or amendment to the rule?
I have an amendment. I move the committee make an order amendment number 1 to House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 5009 offered by Representative Scanlon of Pennsylvania, which strikes Section 708 that prohibits coverage under the TRICARE program for interventions for the treatment of gender dysphoria for a child under the age of 18. Madam Chair, as Ranking Member Smith mentioned during the testimony, Republicans have gone beyond the traditionally bipartisan process when they included this terrible provision, and despite disagreement, Republicans are forcing through what would be the first restriction of any kind of gender-affirming medical care written into federal law. And it's not only bad process, it's bad policy. We're forcing our military families to choose between serving their country or providing needed care for their children. These decisions are about children's health, their parents, and their doctors, not about politics or politicians. But Republicans are taking away power from parents and agency away from our military families at a time when recruitment and retention are paramount. So I urge adoption of this amendment, and I yield back my time.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Hearing no further discussion, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
I ask for roll call, Madam Chair.
Roll call has been requested. Clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Burgess, Mr. Reschenthaler, Mr. Massey, Mr. Norman. No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. No. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mr. Langworthy. No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Ganlon. Mr. Neguse. Aye. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez. Aye. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair.
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
3 yeas, 5 nays.
The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule.
Mr. Neguse.
I move the committee make in order amendment number 6 to the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 5009, offered by myself and several other members, which amends Section 514 to ensure state and territorial governors retain oversight of the transfer of National Guard forces to the U.S. Space Force. Not to belabor it, we, of course, had this discussion earlier. We just simply say this is language that was supported by all governors in our country, Governor McMaster, Governor Abbott, Governor Kemp, every governor in our country, Republican and Democratic, believed that this language was of vital importance to ensuring that our states retain sovereignty over their national guards. I hope this is an issue that we can resolve. I would certainly welcome the support of my colleagues on the other side for the amendment, but as this bill gets to the floor, I hope that this is something that they might consider.
Yeah, Mr. Goose, I raised some issues too. I was concerned about the, power, taking the power away from the governor. I do think that this is limited in scope to 574 officers. It's limited in the fact that they can agree to go or not agree to go to SpaceX. Now, are they getting under the tent could expand it? That is a concern. But in this case, with this, I'm going to vote against it. But I share the concerns. Why is it all of a sudden a problem? Why hadn't this has been in effect I'm 40 years old, so it's been in effect for at least 40 years. So anyway, I appreciate you raising it, and I think there'll be more debate on this. I yield back.
Mr. Roy.
Madam Chair, being brief so our colleagues can get down the street. I just spoke out earlier in support conceptually of needing to address this issue. I think we need to move forward with the rule as it is and move forward, but I think by the next NDAA, this needs to be addressed, and happy to work with the gentleman from Colorado to do that. I think we need to respect states in this regard and appreciate him bringing the issue forward. I yield back.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Burgess, Mr. Reschenthaler, Mr. Massey, Mr. Norman. No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. No. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mr. Langworthy. No. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. McGovern. Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leger-Fernandez. Ms. Leger-Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair.
No.
Madam Chair, no.
The clerk will report the total.
3 yeas, 5 nays.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not adopted. Further amendments? Hearing no request for further amendments, the question is on the motion from the gentleman from Georgia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
As for recorded vote, Madam Chair.
Recorded vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess, Mr. Reschenthaler, Mr. Massey, Mr. Norman. Aye. Mr. Norman, aye. Mr. Roy. Aye. Mr. Roy, aye. Mrs. Houchin. Mr. Langworthy. Aye. Mr. Langworthy, aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. McGovern.
No.
Mr. McGovern, no. Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Neguse. No. Mr. Neguse, no. Ms. Leger-Fernandez. No. Ms. Leger-Fernandez, no. Madam Chair.
Aye.
Madam Chair, aye.
The clerk will report the total.
5 yeas, 3 nays.
And the ayes have it. The motion is to report. The motion to report is agreed to. Accordingly, Mr. Scott will be managing this rule for the majority.
And Ms. Leger-Fernandez for the minority.
Thank you. Without objection, the committee is adjourned.